in the neighborhood. Years and years ago, we were looked on as the outcast or something like that. So it's really nice to be asked as just one of the community members. And I have in my Stanley staple gun holder a Bhagavad Gita, which is like our Bible. Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. So I just picked a verse that's one of my favorites, and it's the Lord scene of Bhagavad Gita is on a battlefield. The Lord is speaking to his disciple Arjuna. So just picture that scene. And this is right in the middle of the whole dialogue. And he's saying, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that as an offering unto me. So there's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita which describes that whatever a great man does or whatever the leaders of any community do, all the other people will naturally follow. So I thought that this verse was appropriate just because it's like we want to invoke the presence of the Lord or the supreme power, however we understand, to please bless all of us to make decisions and choose in such a way that everyone becomes benefited. So sometimes the example is given that all living beings are like the leaves and branches of the tree of existence, and that the Supreme is the root of that tree. So Florida is a very watery place. I'm a great aficionado of the springs. And we know that if you pour water on the root of the tree, all the leaves and branches are nourished. So we're praying for the presence of the Lord and his blessings, that all of you, all of making choices how to govern things here, be done with his blessings and by his mercy. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hare.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Disciple Vega T. At this time, I have the roll call. Madam City Clerk.
Commissioner Jamison?
Here.
Commissioner Gestrin?
Present.
Commissioner Barnes?
Present.
Vice Mayor Weller?
Present.
Mayor Williams?
Present. Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on. At this time, we're going to allow candidate Martin for the Alachua County Judge Group 4 to come introduce himself at this time.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everyone doing? My name is Abron C. Martin, and as was stated, I'm a candidate for Alachua County Court Judge. And I really appreciate this opportunity to come introduce myself to the citizens of Hot Springs. And I understand this protocol, and I'm directing my comments to the commission. I feel a little awkward with my back turned. So I'm going to kind of try to go back and forth and not take up too much of your time. But once again, I am ecstatic by the fact that I can come here and talk to you folks for just a few moments. Judges, there's a judicial race and there's a contested race. You may or may not know that because people tend not to get so involved in judicial races. You don't have a lot of contact with judges directly. I'm running for a county court position, Alachua County Court Group 4. And arguably, of all the judiciary, the county court judge has the most direct contact with the people. It's difficult to get excited about that because you see this person in a robe, they sit on the bench, and you hope to never, ever have to see them. But a judge impacts people's lives on a daily basis. And when you do hear about a judge in the news or the legal system, it's always someone's upset about it. they're angry, they don't agree with this decision or that decision. But I think the point of what I want to bring out during the course of this election is that that's really is not what it's about. What it's got to be about is like when your parents may have made decisions about your life that you didn't like. My grandmother used to send me out to get a switch, and when I did something wrong, I didn't like it, but ultimately I trusted her. I believed that she had my interest at heart. And when a system is trustworthy, when they conduct themselves in a manner that instills trust, then whatever decision is made, the community can get behind that. Now, how do you know I'm the type of person that you can get behind? Well, you don't, because I can get up here and I can tell you anything. I can say whatever it is that I think you want to hear. So what I ask you to do is investigate me. Come up and talk to me. Shake my hand. Ask me questions. Now, on the campaign trail, I've learned that people do have probing questions. However, because of judicial canon, judicial ethics, I sometimes give very unsatisfactory answers. And the reason for that is because the most important thing about a judge is that you believe that you're going to get a fair shake-up. And if I go about announcing my opinions, while I'm going to rule on a particular matter, then one person or the other is going to get the impression that I'm not going to be a fair person. I'm all about instilling trust. My life experience, my 16 years working at the public defender's office, my many years of working in the community will demonstrate that I do want to care about the people I serve. I believe very firmly in the concept of servant leadership. And that is what I want to be. Servant leader. A judge is not above everyone. They have a role to play, but they got to understand what that role is. And I do very clearly understand what my role is. So I hope that you take a little time out your day to come speak with me. I'm going to leave some material with. I'm not sure what the protocol is. If I can hand it to you directly, I will. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I've known Abronsi for a very long time. He's an excellent lawyer, great ethics, really skilled in trial work and what he's trying to do. And probably most importantly, and somebody that's running for judge, is to ask around, like he said. Ask your friends, ask the folks that know Abronsi. Ask Ms. Lawson. I've served with her for, I think it was 16 years on the Newberry City, 12 and a half, on the Newberry City Commission, and she knows Abronsi very well, and as do local lawyers, as a very fine candidate for county judge of Alachua County. So, the nice thing about that race is you have good choices to make, and Abronsi being one of the very good choices.
Who are the choices for that now?
Suzanne Bullard is running, and Jose Moreno, and Abronsi. Those are the three candidates, in my understanding.
Who's the current judge in that, you know?
It's been vacated by Judge Kreider, I believe. Is that Abronsi? Is that right?
Phil Penna.
Phil Penna?
Who recently went to the circuit court.
Okay.
So it's a vacant seat, really?
I'm sorry.
It's a vacant
It's an open seat, yes, sir.
open seat?
And the primary is on August 26th.
Okay. I thank you for coming on tonight. Just state all people that wear robes are not bad people. Did y'all got that right? Pastors. Yes, indeed. All right, thank you again.
Well, y'all had one of the finest examples coming out of your territory in Judge Glant. He's
Oh, yes. Yes.
fine example as a judge.
Yes. Okay. So at this time, we're moving on to the presentation by Kathy Nicholas. Is she here? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and esteemed commissioners and city attorney and city manager. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about e-cigarettes. I understand that not too long ago you all agreed or voted to opt in to the ordinance that was passed in Alachua County. So I'm here just on an educational mission of sorts, just to hopefully answer any questions you might have about e-cigarettes and provide a little information. I usually have a snazzy PowerPoint presentation. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to show it to you with tonight. So we're going to do it old school, and we're going to look at our PowerPoint handout. Did you all receive at least everybody? Okay, great. And I do have, if this could be passed down at least just briefly, I think it'll help. If that's okay. To just, this is one of the slides in particular that kind of blows up a little bit bigger. I only have one of those that I brought that shows the slide that actually has the components of e-cigarettes. So I will try not to take too much of your time up this evening. And again, if you have questions, please stop me, and thank you again for your time. So we're going to talk about, if my contacts let me see the small print that's on some of these, we're going to do an overview and history of electronic nicotine delivery systems, components, and use of the devices, prevalence data that we have thus far, scientific health assessments and findings, policy and legal response, marketing implications, and the future of e-cigarettes. And so I'm going to read a little bit more than I would off the slides because they're very tiny, unfortunately. This is when it would go, and we'd switch to the next slide. So anyway, unfortunately not going to happen tonight. So there's some objectives that we use when we do continuing education programs, not quite as important, but I do want, hopefully, for you all to be better educated about this subject matter in the future, so that even if you've already voted for this, that you can be educated for people who might approach you with questions themselves about this subject matter. It is a hot topic right now. E-cigarettes are highly debated between health professional communities, and even within the public health community, it's an issue of debate, and both in terms of health effects as well as, are they cessation aids? Are they marketed? Is that okay? Should they be? Should they not be? Et cetera. So we're going to hit some of those topics. You'll see the what's in a name slide there, and I'm going to read those to you. The gist of this slide is that the very technical name for these devices is electronic nicotine delivery systems, or ENDS, as it's the shorthand, to electronic nicotine delivery device, electronic cigarette, e-cig, personal vaporizer. So they kind of go from more formal to less formal. E-cig you'll hear used a lot. And what's fascinating about this topic is that we used to have smokers and dippers, and now we have vapors, because the folks who used to call themselves smokers, if they're using these products, now refer to themselves as vapors. So it's really sort of changed sociologically a little bit of the people who use nicotine in our country, the way they self-identify. So that's pretty fascinating unto itself. And vaping is when you inhale the vapors, the aerosol vapors of an electronic cigarette. So they've just taken that on as the way they self-identify. So the next slide we'll breeze through very quickly. It's a little debatable as far as who really truly invented it, but there's a gentleman named Hon Leek who's from China. He was given credit for this current iteration of what we have now as e-cigarettes, and he dreamt about it, and he had a dream about it, he said, and then he woke up the next morning and started developing this product. This was done in China. He worked for a company called Golden Dragon Holdings, which changed to Ruyan afterward, which means resembling smoking. So that's what these products do. And there was an international patent for the e-cigarette awarded to Ruyan in 2007. Marketing to Europe began in 2006 and to the United States in 2007. So they haven't been here but 7 years at this point. And they started out slow, and they have grown and grown vastly. The next slide is just that this gentleman named Herbert Gilbert filed a patent in 1963 for a product that looks a whole lot like the current iteration of e-cigarettes. This little factoid. So the components, and again, I passed that along, and I hope you could take a chance to look at the larger version of that that's included. It matches what's on the next slide called How Does an E-Cigarette Work pretty closely, but it has a little bit of information that I typically share in terms of the components of the product, and they're basically made up, I'm trying to find my exact one I usually use here, of three main components. There is the nicotine cartridge that contains nicotine and other chemicals, and that's one of the issues at debate, is that right now these aren't regulated in terms of what they contain. The contents are not being controlled. So even from brand to brand, and even within the same brand, you don't know what you're getting in terms of the extra chemicals. Usually there's propylene glycol, which helps it to have the smoke effect like you have with plays, et cetera, you go to for theatrical effects. But there are chemicals that aren't being regulated, and we don't know what you're getting. And that includes the nicotine content. So they'll have labeling, and what they found in preliminary research, at least, is that there's differences even within the same brand and from brand to brand. So if it says it has 14 or 15 milligrams of nicotine, it might have 2, or it might have 20, or it might have 0. And if it says 0, it might have some nicotine still. So a lot of confusion for users in the sense of them not getting what they're necessarily expecting is a concern for people. And they have a battery, and the battery is typically rechargeable. The early iterations were more throwaway versions, but most use rechargeable batteries now. And they also have an ignition type. It's not, this is the highly debated word too, whether it truly ignites the heating element. So it heats up the nicotine and the other chemicals, and the user inhales those and produces a vapor that they exhale that looks very much like cigarettes. Just to give my background, I'm a certified tobacco treatment specialist, and I am a health educator, and so my area is tobacco. We help people quit using nicotine in the form of cigarettes and smokeless tobacco, et cetera. So that's concerning to those of us who try and help people quit those products, because this hand-to-mouth motion is one of the issues of addiction itself, that people are not only addicted to the physiological effects of nicotine, but also to the behavioral mechanisms in terms of the comfort and habit that they've formed that goes along with that. Nicotine itself is a stimulant, highly addictive. It affects central and peripheral nervous systems, increases your blood pressure and your heart rate. It constricts your arteries. That's usually what happens. In other words, when you have issues with blood flow not going as well, so your blood pressure changes from that, and it speeds your respiration, so you're breathing a lot heavier. And so for people who have heart disease or asthma or other issues already, smoking these products, or if you prefer vaping these products, you're going to get some similar effects that you do from cigarettes from that. And the other thing that's really new, and I'm spending a little bit more time on this than I will, I'll flip through a lot of the slides in just a minute more quickly. But nicotine itself is toxic, basically to every part of your body, but particularly poison control centers, I'll give you more stats on that in a minute, but have been reporting a whole huge greater number of exposures, both to children and adults and teenagers, that they didn't have in the past, that are specific to e-cigarette use. And they're dangerous because it takes for a lethal dose of nicotine, if you're exposed, for a child it's about 10 milligrams, and for adult about 60 milligrams. Basically about a teaspoon of solid nicotine, and you're a goner. Now there's a mixture of nicotine with other chemicals that's in these, so it depends on what's in there and how much nicotine truly is in there. But they are having people who are having a lot of health problems based on accidental exposure to the nicotine that's contained in these cartridges. And like I said, we'll come back to that just briefly in a little bit. These are very appealing in terms of flavorings. These cartridges, they add in their flavorings like bubblegum or cherry, you name it, pina colada. You can have anything you want, practically chocolate, that you can have in these products. And so those obviously entice new users. And these, again, they have a lot of them that have LED lights on the end, so even when you inhale, the light comes on to mimic the effect that you would get from a traditional cigarette product. That's enough for that one. So it's a pneumatic or breath-activated device. This is how does an e-cigarette work. And again, I mentioned that they are typically rechargeable devices that are used right now. This is a newer thing that I had seen a news story on. Apparently some places are having issues with people tossing these products out their window of their car when they're done with them, either in whole or just the cartridges themselves, which are metal, and they're having tires that are punctured from these. So there's some danger, public health warnings or safety issues there, that and some tire dealers the replacement places are happy because they're getting some more business, I guess, but they're concerned about the safety issue of these tires being punctured like that. Okay, so prevalence data. These data that I show you on the slide, that's the adult awareness and use, are from 2012, and you can see awareness is incredibly high. This is for the United States population. 75.4% is what it says there. And people who've ever tried them, 8.1%. And current use at that time was, our current use now is the 2012 that I show is 1.4%. And as you can see, the trend is certainly upward, both in terms of awareness and ever tried. We only have current use data that's very recent. This has been tough to collect data on because it's new and it's grown so exponentially, and so we're kind of struggling a little bit in this arena to keep up with the data and to be able to collect it effectively. But I can assure you that the trend is still upward at this point. And what's fascinating is that awareness was at more than 75%. When this was done in early 2012, when the study was done, it was before the major marketing push had started and before these were being advertised hugely like they are on television and radio, et cetera, right now. Have any of you never heard or seen an e-cigarette marketing piece of some kind? All of you have seen or heard. Okay. That has changed too. Some people in the past used to say, no, I never have. So you're more informed. Or have listened to more radio or television or something. I don't know. But anyway, the point is the awareness is huge because even more so now because of all the marketing efforts that have gone on. So adult awareness and use current smokers, you'll see that among current smokers, over 30% have ever used e-cigarettes. Of those who have ever tried e-cigarettes, about 18% are currently using them. And this is kind of interesting. The study that was done that got this where you see a 90% is the first one, 32.2, et cetera, showed that women were significantly more likely to have tried e-cigarettes than men. And also almost half of the current smokers, 49.5%, were susceptible to using e-cigarettes in the future. So this is, as I mentioned, a growing trend is kind of the gist. Most of these, that's what these relate to, is growth in use and awareness too. Youth use, which is of particular interest to most people, because addiction to nicotine to continue on into adulthood if you start earlier and you're not necessarily even necessarily starting with a traditional cigarette per se, or smokeless tobacco. There's been a dramatic rise, as you can see, from middle school and high school. Middle school went from 1.4% in 11 to 2.7% in 2012. High school from 4.7 in 2011 to 10% in 2012. So more than doubled from 2011 to 2012 for high school students. So of great concern in terms of whether it's addicting a new generation to just a different way to get nicotine. Okay. Florida youth use, I'm really going to zip through these. The gist here is that there is a connection between e-cigarette use and whether youth are smoking cigarettes as well. And so on the slide that has high school students, Florida youth use high school students, among high school students who have ever smoked a cigarette, 15.7% are current e-cigarette users and 35.7% have ever tried an e-cigarette. Among current high school smokers, 36.2% are current e-cigarette users and 58.9% have tried an e-cigarette. Did I skip a slide? Hope not. I apologize. I'm trying to wade between two versions here. What I'd like to do is skip to the slide that shows Florida youth use that has high school students with the yellow bar on the left-hand side that you see there. The gist, like I said, for all these last slides about the youth, is that there is a connection among high school students who have never smoked a cigarette. 2.7% have ever tried an e-cigarette and 1.1% are current e-cigarette users. So the prior slides show that if they've used cigarettes, they've used e-cigarettes. If they've used e-cigarettes, they've used vice versa. E-cigarettes, they've smoked regular cigarettes and vice versa. This shows that number is incredibly low, but it also shows that there are some students who are using e-cigarettes and have never smoked. So that's, again, of interest and concern for those of us who don't want a new generation of addicted nicotine addicts, et cetera. And so more information is still needed. We definitely need some more safety and efficacy data. We don't have any long-term controlled clinical trials at this point. Again, these have only been in our market since 2007, and really in the past 3 to 4 years is when the real radical increase in their use has come about. The variability in design has been, as I mentioned, when you get different results from product to product and even within the same product line in terms of what contents are there. And There have also been vapors. They have to inhale more deeply with most of these products after a brief bit of time, and it actually mimics the effects on the body of the inhalations they're doing with traditional cigarettes. So they're seeing a lot more correlations there as well. There was a study that's listed there on pulmonary effects, and it showed 5 minutes of e-cigarette use led to increase of impedance, which means you can't get air down into your lungs as well, peripheral airway flow resistance, and oxidative stress among healthy smokers. So what we have thus far, there are some concerns, definitely. The other issue is other items that have been found in there, even besides the chemicals. They have some metal and silicate particles found in the cartomizer and aerosol that if you inhale, when you inhale more deeply, you're getting these minuscule particles down into your lungs. We don't want that. It will eventually impede your breathing ability. And there was one woman, and they've had multiple cases of this now, where lipoid pneumonia. So from part of the mixture, she had some issues from the mixture itself in terms of inhaling this and going into her lungs, and she ended up with pneumonia. They couldn't figure out. She was not doing very well at all in the hospital, and they finally realized it was from her smoking e-cigarettes. She ceased, and pneumonia went away, and she got better. And we also have dangers of dermal contact. I mentioned earlier it's dangerous to your whole body. In particular, nicotine exposure to your skin or ingestion, or particularly with no labeling to keep kids safe. These are of concern for those purposes. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot. A very recent article said, in view of consumer protection, e-cigarettes, and especially nicotine-containing liquids as extremely toxic substances, should be officially regulated and labeled with appropriate warnings on health risks, particularly toxicity in children. And this was from the International Journal of Hygiene and Environmental Health from a recent study. This was the poison centers. I'll just give you this quickly. The number of calls to poison centers involving e-cigarette liquids containing nicotine rose from 1 per month in September 2010 to 215 per month in February 2014. So a tremendous increase. That was published in Morbidity and Mortality Weekly not too long ago. And more than 51% of the calls to the poison centers due to e-cigarettes involved young children 5 years and under. About 42% of the poison calls involve people aged 20 and older. Again, the risk for when you're exposed greatly increases depending on your size. So kids start vomiting or start feeling really, really ill much more quickly with a lower dose. So there's also a few cases. You can see the one with the picture of the gentleman that if you go to YouTube and just want to type it in, you can find all sorts of these where e-cigarettes have exploded. This gentleman in this picture is out in West Florida in Panhandle, and he lost a big portion of his tongue and his teeth. His wife said she heard a sound like a firecracker in the other room, and there's a one in Atlanta not too long ago. So you can find instances of malfunctioning. Some of these products, do want to explain that they've really evolved even more recently. So they don't even look like cigarettes as they used to. They look funky and cool, and they are also not looking like cigarettes, perhaps to be able to be used in areas where cigarettes aren't allowed to be used. Some of them have digital displays that tell you how many more puffs you have left or if it's going to overheat, that kind of stuff. So it's incredible how they've evolved so quickly over time in terms of more and more technologically savvy, I'd say. And so in response to this, because in 2009, FDA started getting concerned about reports they were hearing and the fact that these were being imported into the United States, and they issued a series of warnings to the companies who were bringing these in, to clinicians, to be aware of these products, that they weren't tested, that these were not approved for cessation aids, and that is still accurate. They're not approved as cessation aids for tobacco. And the FDA attempted to, one of the, they tried to block the import of e-cigarettes into the United States, and they claimed they were adulterated, misbranded, or unapproved drug device combinations and should fall under the FDA's regulatory authority as medical devices. Cetera, one of the major importers of e-cigarettes, fought back, and I guess technically won because they were able to keep them from, there was the injunction passed, they were able to keep importing, and they were ruled to be, and this was the choice of Cetera, as tobacco products, which a lot of people had been surprised at the time, but tobacco products are less regulated than most products that we actually purchase. So they got the injunction. FDA only has regulatory authority under the Family Smoking Prevention and Control Act of 2009, and we'll talk about that more in 2 seconds. We're getting to the end, I promise. Some subsequent responses. Flipping ahead. There are many countries where it's banned: Austria, Belgium, Canada. I won't go into all of them. A lot on my list here, and a lot have banned certain pieces of it, or it's been in whole. It's banned in stateside. It's California, North Dakota, New Jersey, Utah, etc. And in Florida, recently a bill was passed that you might be familiar with, 224, a Senate bill. And so in the state of Florida, we now have a regulation that regards sales to minors, and it prohibits sales to minors, and also has some definition of the signage that needs to be included at those retail locations. But of course, it's banned in Florida. And it doesn't include some of the ordinance restrictions that were in place in the Alachua County ordinance that you subsequently opted into. So there's not, as the access to the youth is a big issue, as well as using these products only where traditional cigarettes can be used. So that the state regulation doesn't cover those things. So the ordinance that Alachua County and you therefore opted into goes beyond what the state is restricting. Over 100 counties and municipalities have actually passed these, and the ball is rolling at this point for that. In return, there are some industry and consumer responses that have happened. CASA is a particular group that has the Consumer Advocates for Smoke-Free Alternatives Association that has spoken out against these restrictions and said, this is our right to do this, et cetera. And you can just see a few screen captures. They actually have World Vaping Day, which is like in contrast to our Great American Smokeout and World No Tobacco Day, that kind of thing. And so marketing implications, you all said you have seen these products, and the gist is they're everywhere. And millions are being spent each year on e-cigarette advertising, whereas traditional tobacco products haven't been able to be marketed for decades. Since 1965, when warnings first went on cigarette packages, up through being banned on TV, being banned on billboards, they can't target youth, et cetera. Those are not in place right now for e-cigarettes. So, and they're definitely not allowed to be marketed as therapeutic. And what we're finding is a lot of these products are being marketed as technically not therapeutic, but these they're marketing them as, but we don't have this and we don't have that. I mean, the gist of a lot of the marketing efforts is that comes across as that they are therapeutic or they can aid you to quit using tobacco. And again, restrictions on candy flavorings have been in effect for traditional cigarette products, also not enforced. And the marketing to youth with all these candy flavored, mixtures that you can get with these, there's a lot of concern that youth are being enticed to use these products. And there are some advertisements that are undoubtedly aimed toward youth that don't act like it, but they say, be independent, do what you want to do, things that were traditionally used to market tobacco back in the 1950s, 60s, et cetera. Okay, so they get free promotion also by earned media. And the future of e-cigarettes, the FDA did finally extend its authority very recently. And so they have right now out a deeming rule that was published on April 25th of this year. And there was originally a 75-day window for people to do responses to those. And what that does is, what this will do if it passes as originally written is it will register that these companies will have to register with the FDA and report product and ingredient listings. They will be only allowed to market new tobacco products after FDA review. That's only new tobacco products because it includes more than just e-cigarettes. It actually includes cigars, pipe tobacco, nicotine gels, water pipe or hookah, tobacco, and dissolvables that are on the market now. They can only make direct and implied claims of reduced risk if the FDA confirms that scientific evidence supports the claim and that marketing the product will benefit public health as a whole, and they're not allowed to distribute free samples. And newly deemed tobacco products, including the e-cigarettes, there would be minimum age and identification restrictions to prevent sales to underage youth, requirements to include health warnings, and prohibition of vending machine sales unless in a facility that never admits youth. So some of the big ticket items that aren't included in that are the marketing in general for these products for youth still to be marketed strongly to start using these products. And that's more, there's more, but again, I think you get the feel here. I don't want to be, I want to be fair for the fact that I have talked to one or two people who said, this really did help me. Yes, they had all of them who said that they've quit have said that they had dual use at the same time, because what they ended up doing was going back and smoking cigarettes while they were smoking e-cigarettes as well. But they've said, yes, it helped me. They haven't, nobody that I've talked to has said e-cigarettes, I quit because of e-cigarettes. What the big concern about with dual use is, I don't know if you can see this picture. I took a picture of this vehicle about a month ago or something, and I was like, oh man, there's you can't see it because it's so small, but there's a man with his hand out the window with his cigarette in his hand, and there's a sign on the back of it for an e-cigarette company, marketing the e-cigarette company. And of huge concern for people who want to quit is if they use more than one form of nicotine, because it's almost like a multiplicative effect on them having to quit not just one thing they're used to doing, but two things. So if they use smokeless and cigarettes, they've got this sensation that they're used to oral cavity-wise. They also have hand-to-mouth with cigarettes, et cetera. It just makes it even more difficult, and they typically bring in more nicotine than if they just use one product. So I think I just wanted to point out that I am happy that you asked me to come here, and that there is a tobacco-free Florida statement that you can look up online that pretty much, I think, says the same thing. Or maybe I haven't been as clear here. The answers right now, we don't know the answers truly fully. There is still a lot of debate, as I mentioned at the beginning, about are these products safer? Are these products a way that people could quit? We have preliminary evidence that shows that they're not an effective cessation aid. We have some research studies that were done of quit lines where people had called across 7 states, and they actually found out people were more likely to use e-cigarettes more likely to stay smoking if they used e-cigarettes during their attempt to quit. But it's really an interesting back and forth right now in this arena that people are very upset and for lots of different reasons, because they feel their rights are infringed, or they feel that the data aren't there yet, or they feel that the data are there and why haven't we done this sooner, and they feel that I'm not happy if I have to go into a restaurant and leave because somebody lights up or starts using this product. There's lots of that out there. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'm happy at your discretion if you'd like to have any questions answered.
Any questions? Anyone from the audience?
I'm sorry?
I was asking anyone from the audience have any questions?
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Dowdy.
Does your last statement mean that e-cigarettes could be supposed to be restaurant facilities even though there's no smoking in the state of Florida?
In areas where an ordinance has not been passed prohibiting that, that's correct. Thankfully, in my opinion, because I will be overt about that because I have children and I'm not comfortable enough yet with that lack of evidence of safety. Not in Alachua County, once this ordinance goes into effect July 1st. That included a prohibition on them being used in places where cigarettes cannot be used. So if you're in an enclosed environment, a restaurant for the most part is typically enclosed, and other enclosed environments that you go into that have not been pushed in this Indoor Air Act that goes into effect, and that will also basically be effective in the product. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
At this time, we move on to continue business. First on the item agenda is consider Resolution 2014-G. City Manager. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, this is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of High Springs adopting a real property policy which governs the acquisition and disposition of property by the City of High Springs and provides an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2014-G upon its reading by title only.
You heard the reading of the resolution. Commission, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the passing of Resolution 2014-G as read in the record.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Anyone from the audience? Hearing none. Excuse me?
This basically gives us a process to acquire and to sell surplus property.
That's exactly right.
It's just something we need on the books to allow us to do that, basically to acquire and sell.
Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weller,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Gessner, Commissioner Jameson,
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Discuss the solid waste service provided by WCA. City Manager.
We have the gentleman from WCA here. Yes. I would ask him to come up. I think the question had to do with if both trash and yard waste is being collected and disposed of at the same time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I put this on the agenda item, and while that is one of my concerns, that was not the main concern why I put that on there. The main concern, which started, was the second container. And let me just say this. The reason I put it on the agenda was because the lack of a second container, and then at the last meeting, how we were told there would be a second container available, and then information I found out the next day. Additional information I put in an email in the last few days was to the commissioners about trash being last Friday in River Glen. I followed the truck around. I watched him pick up solid waste and yard trash, and they all went into the same container. Now, I see a letter here from an email from the Waste WCA, and they make a very valid point. And it says, if residents use a second cart, how's the driver to know if it's yard waste or if it's solid waste? Absolute, very valid point. And I could see that with the driver in the truck going down the street, one garbage can that has been issued, then there's a second garbage can that some people have purchased by their own money that has a pickup hook on it. And so he picks it up, dumps it in. I know they were yard waste because limbs on two of those were sticking out, but he still picked it up and put it in. That issue is an issue I have a problem with because it's supposed to be picked up separate. You can deal with it, how it's going to be picked up. But my first question was, or first comment was, at the last meeting, we were told a yard container was brought out here and rolled out here and said any citizen that wanted it could get one. Anybody wanting one could get one. At that point, it was not explained to me or the commissioners that that would be a cost to the city. It was not being provided by WCA. It was being provided by a decision by the city manager to purchase 20 of them at $60 a piece. Now, I'm guessing there's over 1,000 users of trash in the city. The first problem I have is, what if everybody asked for it? That's $60,000. A decision was made without the commission's knowledge to start purchasing this, make a public notice that they're free to anybody that wants one, and we now could have potentially a $60,000 bill added to the city budget. I don't know that that was done properly. The second question it raises, which is an absolute valid question for WCA, how do they know it's yard waste? How do they know the second container is yard waste if the lid is closed? We've created a problem here, and it's my opinion. You can address it, city manager can address it. I think the commissioners should address how we're going to pay for $60,000 if everybody asks for one. And so it's my opinion that the city manager should sit down with WCA and come up with a solution to this. That's really, I'm getting calls on, not dozens of calls, I'm getting 5 to 10 calls in the last week about this. It's people saying it didn't get picked up. People now saying they're because of the Friday pickup, it's going all day. And some people, a lady across the street this morning told me in her neighborhood they were picking it up between 9 and 10 o'clock at night. So we're even having it at night when in the contract it says there should be as little disturbance as possible. So while I'm quite confident WCA is a wonderful organization, it's not what I, as a commissioner, expected in the transition from a company that had a trash receptacle, a yard waste receptacle. It was being picked up, no problems. It was designated what was one, what was another. Now I'm getting 5 to 10 calls a week that people are saying this is not working. They're not picking it up right. And I observed every yard waste can dumped in with the solid waste. But I grant you again, how would he know? Except for the ones that had branches sticking out. So, commissioners, I'm one commissioner that's not happy with the decision that we may be spending $60,000 for yard containers. This needs to be fixed. And if no one else sees this problem, then I guess I'm the only one that's concerned about it. But I leave it for the mayor to talk about or any other commissioners to talk about. But we have a problem with our trash pickup right now. And I think you all know that. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that. It really wasn't a problem until Mr. Barnes went out and presented a flyer to the public. We were getting requests 2 or 3, and we were handling it in that manner. Now we've got a large number because it doesn't say really if you really need it, it just says come and get it. So we have stopped our process at this time, and we will review it because you're absolutely right. We're not going to spend $60,000 providing the entire community. Another problem, sir, is you are running for commission and you have put out a flyer under the city's name.
Certainly did.
You need to cease and desist.
No, I don't have to.
Well, sir,
I
then
think
you'll
you're
get a
wrong.
letter from the election commission.
Mr. Mayor, I think, Mr. Mayor, I'll address a couple things. At the meeting that was said, it was said, and you can listen to the meeting, anybody in this town that wants a second container can get one. They're free. It was not explained to us that it would be a cost to the city. It was never said. Listen to the meeting, okay? The flyer, I can give out any flyer, it's my opinion, and he can file an ethics complaint, he can file an election complaint, do whatever he wants to do. But it's my right as a city commissioner to tell the people if they want a second container, the city's providing them. I've been asked, where's my second container? And another problem that we've created with this is now people still don't know if they're supposed to bag their yard waste or how they're supposed to put it out there. Nothing's going out to tell them. So the city manager needs to get a program that informs the community what's going on. And if he wants to keep having meetings to figure this out on his own without presenting it to the city commission, then continue doing that, and I'll file my own complaint. Thank you, Mayor.
I think we're finna turn a mower here into a mountain here. I think we're intelligent enough and sensible enough to sit down and resolve this problem. I don't think we need to make this such a big, blown out issue. I think we're competent enough to sit down with WCA and we can come up with a solution on how we can handle this. What the Republicans, we had plenty of complaints about them also. Plenty of complaints. And we resolved them. And we can do the same thing with this. Sit down, city manager, WCA. I'm quite sure you're competent enough to say what we need to do to fix this. What they need to do. Do we need cans? If not, whatever. I think we can sit down and resolve this without blowing and making out such a big issue. Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
Andy, is it
Yes, sir.
correct? Let's see, Commissioner James.
I appreciate the comments. I appreciate Mr. Barnes's concern. I would take exception, though, the fact that I think it was mentioned several times that the cost for the cans that we were going to do that. I think the night when the can was out here that it was stated that we would do that. So I don't think that was a surprise to anyone. I think it was on an as-needed basis, and we assumed that the number would be somewhat small because some people kept their ones from the previous person. I have a black round 30-gallon that I use, so I understand the concern, but I think to say that we didn't know, I would object to that. I understood it, so I'll put it that way. I understood that the cost, I thought several times was made perfectly clear during meetings that there was confusion as to the second can. We all agreed to that, whether you all were going to provide that. That was the deal. And the city manager basically looked into buying something wholesale and getting it at a good price. But I was completely clear that cost we would endure, that we would take on. We just thought the numbers would be that it would not be a great burden. So I would hope that you would get with the city manager and figure out the best to improve what's going on. But I want to make sure that the cost factor doesn't get just thrown out there. And I knew we were paying for it. I heard it at the meetings, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Yeah, in your email, you indicated that some people have two carts and only paying for one, and some of them are using it for yard waste, that second cart for yard waste, and you can't tell what is what. I think part of that problem is the fact that you have both garbage and yard trash picked up on the same day, and your people have to pay attention to what they're doing. When I put out mine, I make sure that there's a branch sticking out. Hopefully they'll understand that one is yard waste. But that confusion, the way you have set it up, which we bought into, but the way you've set it up for that everything to be done on one day, I think has added to the confusion of this. I think maybe if people have that second container that looks like your container is yours, a second container of yours, or the black container, maybe they need to write yard trash on it. I don't know, something, but that's the pickup that we have, and there's got to be a way of distinguishing that for your people to distinguish that, however you can come up with that. My understanding also is that even if someone has that second container, they can have 10 containers out there of yard trash, and you're going to pick it up. Doesn't matter, because when you were up here before and we asked that question, when we had Republic here, you had one container, and that's the only container you could use for yard trash. But because you all aren't providing the container, then if someone has 10, 20-gallon trash cans out there of yard waste, then your company is going to pick that up. Am I correct on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. As far as this issue of purchasing, it was my understanding, at least I heard it this way, that it was going to be on an as-needed basis, and again, it was going to see how things came. Now, the manager understands what that we have purchasing policy. And then if he's going to end up purchasing something over $5,000, then he's got to come before the commission. So at this point, he can only go up to $5,000 as far as purchasing these cans, and then he's got to come before us. And then, and if it goes that far, then we're certainly going to have a problem in determining what we're going to do. But yeah, I think the mayor's correct. The manager and WCA need to sit down and work this out and figure out how this is going to be handled, especially since everything gets picked up on one day. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Thank you. I think one of the things I find distressing is that I recall in the beginning of all this process, we were told that it was the same service, and clearly it has not been, and that's not a fault of yours. I think we can resolve it, but what's distressing to me, as hard as we try and say it's the same, it's not the same, and we're still dealing with the unresolved issues that were identified like the second meeting, and here we are, and there are those that will ask for a second container. I wish that we would just work as hard to resolve these issues that we have made instead of attacking one another. The point is, it's not the same service, so we've got to make it right. It ended up being more costly for commercial, 50 cents less for residential. And why did we change? There's still, I could see these same unresolved issues the last time we met when the contract was signed. This is nothing new. There's been plenty of time to deal with it. But I just am distressed. It's not the same service. So it's time to just fix it best we can. And without, the city doesn't have that kind of money to spend $60,000. It was even mentioned the first time when it was went into gear, and the other company picked up the old cans and took them over there by the cemetery, that we were going to try and purchase some of those back. Well, that didn't happen either. So a lot's been talked about. We just need to resolve it. It's been our making. Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes.
Purchasing policy 2013-A says that city manager does have the right to spend up to $5,000. With paragraph 8, public notice and competitive purchasing requirements, the purchase of essential goods and services costing more than $500 but less than $5,000 shall utilize a competitive process for reasonable public notice solicitation, get two responsive bids. I'm sure we didn't do that. And I personally will say this to you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to Commissioner Jameson pointing out in the minutes exactly where at the meeting it was said that this was going to be paid for, but how it was going to be paid for. And if he produces that for me and shows that it was said in a meeting, I'll be more than happy to apologize that it was stated at a public meeting. But if it was not, then bring that document forward and make the truth known, because I was here and I do not remember being told in a public meeting who was going to pay for those cans. I have nothing else, and I look forward to you negotiating it out. It's really, as Mr. Mayor, you said, it's something that needs to be fixed, but it's not been fixed. And it's just continually goes on until it either is going to go away and people will get mad, or we fix it. And that's what we should do, is fix it.
I remember when they first received the cans. Everybody was up in the uproar because we had two cans. Some people was uproar because it was blue. So you're going to have that. You're going to have that. But you heard our concerns. Either you can mark them, change the days. It can be fixed. And I just believe that we can sit down and fix the problem. I'm quite sure you're willing to work with us. Correct? Sir. City manager willing to work with you? So you heard our concerns. So can we just sit down and fix this? Yes, sir.
I would like to just talk a quick few minutes about some of Mr. or Commissioner Barnes's oversight last Friday. You mentioned that my driver was going down the road just dumping cartons into the trash can. And some of them were yard waste, some of them were trash. Of course, I think you see my email, I was unaware of that. I do know that in the beginning, we had talked with all of our employees, especially our MSW drivers or the trash drivers, and told them to be on the lookout for Republic cans, that if they had trash in them, please dump them. We don't want the citizens to keep holding the trash and letting it build up. So evidently the practice has continued, but I will resolve that. My drivers starting tomorrow, will no longer dump any other carts other than the black 96 carts. Now for those, there are 2 customers within inside the city limits that have signed up for a second container. And so all I can tell you is if it's a black cart, it's got our cart number on it, it's going to get dumped in the trash truck.
You mean in the garbage truck, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Not yard trash.
Not yard trash. If I speak of yard trash, I will use the word yard.
Okay.
But I will say the service is absolutely different than what you guys were doing. In the previous contract that you had, it required you to take a branch that's big and break it up and put it into the cart. Our service does not require you to do that. We do ask that you stay within certain diameters and lengths so we don't injure my employees. And there are many piles around the city that we've taken care of. And if you remember, I made a very big promise to you guys that there was a big yard waste pile out on 441 that it was massive, as big as your eye see there. And we went over there and took care of it. Because it's 441, I wanted it out of the site so it didn't affect people's thought processes on the city. And we do that for people, and as we speak right now, there are several customers, I think there are 7 within the city limits that have very big piles that I don't want my drivers spending the time on. I want them to go get stuff that they can get serviced, and then, those things is what we would consider a bulk pickup. We'll bring the truck in to do that normally on the 1st and 3rd Friday, but I'm making a special trip up here tomorrow, and I'm bringing the claw truck up here tomorrow because there's 7 residences that I want serviced, and I want it serviced now, and I don't want them to have to wait till next week because it would put them after the 4th. So, you're absolutely right when you say the service isn't the same. I honestly believe it's better. I know Courtney over at Public Works is very pleased with what we've been doing. Maybe 2-3 misses a week, which I think is pretty good. Well, I need a second one. I wore this one out. But, I'm more than happy to sit down and try to do whatever's possible to make things better for all of you. I don't want you guys getting screamed at and yelled at. At the same token, I don't want that either. I want you guys to be happy with the service. We try very, very hard. I personally am up here every Friday, riding the streets. And, if my drivers make a mistake, I don't want them pulling off route to go get that corrected. I'll call them, tell them, be a little bit more cautious, and I'll take care of it myself. I'll put it in the back of my pickup truck and go haul it to them. So we're trying very diligently to give you guys quality service, and I think so far, although it's not perfect, we're doing a pretty good job.
Mr. Barnes.
I want to make it clear that I believe WCA is doing what was agreed to in the contract. I believe you are doing what you felt was in the contract that we approved. But the city, I can't go out and I can pass a flyer on my subdivision and tell them if they want a free can, call the city, because he said you can get one. That's my subdivision. But I also can come up with a flyer that says, here's the program that we said tonight. And it might change next week. We have not informed the public on our website, in a letter, anyway. And you had a flyer that went out that talked about it, a 2-page flyer. But it didn't spell out what containers, exactly how it was going to be done. People are confused. And that's really the problem. People are confused. If there's any public out here tonight that wants to speak to it, I guess they can speak to it too. But the people that I talk to are confused about how their yard waste and trash is going to get picked up. Some people don't care if the yard waste gets dumped into solid waste. Others are.
Well, yeah. I certainly care because I got to pay a lot more to dispose of it in the garbage truck.
That's a whole other issue. So anyway, negotiate it out, figure it out. Let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I'll be in River Glen tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when they come through, and you can come over there and I'll give you a cup of coffee.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any more comments? Anyone from the audience? Yes, sir. Come to the mic, and sir.
My name is Vernon Shearer. I've been a longtime resident of High Springs, and as far as this problem with yard trash and waste trash being dumped together, didn't just happen recently. It happened the very first week. My trash, my granddaughter's yard trash, was all dumped in the same container as the yard trash and the lady up the street. And it's happened more than once. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I would like to make one more comment on, I know it's a sore subject on the commercial rates, but I've worked very hard and looked at all the services throughout the city and tried to reduce the service levels that is beneficial to the city, and I've done that on several accounts. I'll just use the Mayflower, for instance, was being serviced with a 2-yarder twice a week, and I put a 4-yarder there once a week, and it was a reduced rate back to the city. And I've done that in many incidences to try to reduce the cost for the city.
All right, thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I just want to say I appreciate you're doing that. I have sensed a willingness on your part to accommodate, work towards, and that you really want to do a good job. My problem is we have not communicated to the city what's needed, what's expected. It's been on our end of the thing that we need to fix. And I appreciate you very much working towards that.
Thank you. And in my meeting with the city manager, I will certainly address that and work with the city to try to get some type of information packet out to the public.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Right,
You're welcome.
That's your hand? Yes, ma'am.
This is all finished and negotiated. Could we put it on our website?
Yes, ma'am.
The resolution and a more specific description of how it's going to take place, and then if it's on our website, that will help a great deal. And if they're wondering about which one is yard trash and garbage trash, before we had different colored lids. So maybe just a spray can on one of them, a different color lid, that would help. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Nothing else. We're going to move on to citizen requests and comments. Issues not on the agenda. Please give your name for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Seeing now, we're moving on to new business. Number 1 is discuss the operation of a group home within the city limits. Mr. City Manager?
Sure, yeah, I can address that. I had a meeting with Mr. Coons from the Regional Planning Group. He did some research for us. Basically, about 15 years ago, the state was experiencing a lot of dissension about homes going into communities. And the state passed a law, Chapter 419 under the social welfare, which really states that a group home that has 6 or less, it must be considered as a single resident. And from 7 to 14 requires a supervisory staff in that home, but it's still considered a resident. They took the power away from the city and basically described it here, and I guess it was to promote group homes. The current group home, we are advising her, although she has a state permit for 7, we're really telling her to keep it at 6, and it's simply a residential home. No restrictions. I realized there was some ambiguities within our own land use plan, and the Regional Planning Group, which has been contracted to change that, is in the process of making one of those changes and taking all that out of the land use plan. I think when they wrote it, they didn't realize the state had taken over that responsibility and taken it away from the cities.
Okay.
Now you have that state ordinance or state law in front of you.
Yeah.
And if anybody else in the audience would like to have it, I certainly would be glad to give it to you.
Commissioner, question? Yes. Vice Mayor Weller?
Mr. Attorney, how does this all play into what we have on our record at this point? I mean, is the city, even though there's a state law, are there things that the city can do within its own ordinances that is more restrictive than what the state specifies?
Commissioner Weller, my understanding of Chapter 419 and the area that the manager was talking about is 419.001 subsection 2. And the first section of this statute talks about the definition of terms. And the first definition is community residential home, meaning a dwelling unit licensed to serve residents who are clients of the Department of Elderly Affairs, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Children and Family Services, or licensed by the Agency Healthcare Administration, which provides living environment for 7 to 14 unrelated residents who operate the functional equivalent of a family, including such supervision and care by supportive staff as may be necessary to meet the physical, emotional, and social needs of the residents. And then it goes on to say what are the licensing entities, and there's a number of entities which permit these kind of facilities or authorize these kind of facilities. And then there's a definition of local governments, which we would fall under. And then it talks or speaks to planned residential communities, who is a resident, as a person who has developmental disabilities as defined under Florida statutes. And then we get to subparagraph 2, which is really to the meat of the matter of what you were asking about. And that states that homes of 6 or fewer residents, which otherwise meet the definition of community residential home, shall be deemed a single-family unit and a non-commercial residential use for the purpose of local laws and ordinances. Homes of 6 or fewer residents which otherwise meet the definition of a community residential home shall be allowed in single-family or multifamily zoning without approval by the local government, provided that such home shall not be located within a radius of 1,000 feet of another such home with 6 or fewer residents. Such homes with 6 or fewer residents shall not be required to comply with the notification provisions in this section, provided that prior to licensure, the sponsoring agency provides the local government with the most recently published data compiled for licensing entities that identifies all the community residential homes within the jurisdictional limits of the local government in which the proposed site is to be located, in order to show that no other community residential home is within the radius of 1,000 feet of the proposed home with 6 or fewer residents. At the time of the home occupancy, the sponsoring agency must notify the local government that the home is licensed by the licensing entity. So the intent of the statute, as I read it, and my understanding of 419.0012 is that if you're 6 or fewer residents within the community residential home, then you're allowed in single-family zoning districts and multifamily districts almost as a use by right. So I think, as the manager stated, I think the intent of the law was that these types of facilities and entities with 6 or fewer residents that are defined within the statute were having a very difficult time finding a place that they could operate such a facility. And so the state moved in and said, we're going to create this safe harbor, or this provision which allows for community homes, residential homes that meet the definition of the statute, to operate in single-family residential districts, and the local government does not have the ability to interfere with that. They're essentially used by right. So that's what the statute provides. If you go 7 to 14 as a community residential home, then you're governed by the zoning categories of the local government. So a local government can issue zoning power, or does have the ability to govern a home which is 7 to 14 residents. Now, my analysis begins with looking at the state criteria, which, as the manager said, the Set on Success LLC, filed by Ms. Bacon, provides that there would be a development residence capacity of 7. In speaking with the individual that reviewed that with the Agency for Persons with Developmental Disabilities, she indicated that that was the 7 was based upon primarily an understanding of how many residents were actually, or how many square feet were in the home. So Ms. Mayfield provided me that information, provided me a complete list of all the application procedures. As stated, we've spoken to your manager, and his interpretation of 419 is that it is allowable as a use if it has 6 or fewer, and his construction is that this home will have only 6 or fewer residents within the home, despite the fact that they applied for 7 residents with their state application and state permitting. The second part of the inquiry is a letter that I received from Gary Grunder, who's a local attorney well known to me for many, many, many years, and it's a letter dated June 13th, 2014. And Mr. Grunder, and I think appropriately so, speaks to ambiguities or perhaps even questions as to how our zoning district is applied. And right now, Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of going through the factual basis to try to give you all some ability to understand the facts of where we're at. And I don't think it's appropriate at this juncture to talk about the resolution of this, or argue the case, or go beyond just the mere facts of where we're at right now. And I don't know that I have all the facts just yet, but I've started working on it. Courtney's working on it. And our first obligation as your city attorney is to develop the facts and then apply law based upon those facts. Mr. Grunder's letter is, and addresses it, this is an appeal of a provisional or special use permit Z-0484. And I think he has the ability to file it as an appeal, and it essentially comes before this board as an appellate matter. And as he well knows, you have to exhaust your administrative remedies before you take any further action. So the first step in his process is, hey, I'm an aggrieved party, and I believe I have standing to file for an appeal to call into question our administrator's decision, and I want an appeal to be heard. And my understanding and his raising of procedural due process rights is that he has the right to do that, and he has the right to request this commission to sit as an appellate body and to make a determination. And under your code provisions, you have the right to affirm our administrator's decision. You have the right to overturn that decision. You have the right to modify his decision. Those are your powers as listed under our land development code. And where Mr. Grunder speaks to is the fact that in our tables, we have under R2 zoning categories, we have defined institutional, and I think the manager was also speaking to this, is that we would like to, I think staff side, your attorney's office would like to clean up areas that have ambiguities in your existing land development regulations. And that's one of the tasks that the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council is undertaking. I spoke to Scott Coons as well on this issue, and he's confirmed basically all the things that I've laid out to you so far as to Section 419. It provides that safe harbor. If you're 6 or fewer, then it's pretty much an issue that the state is already spoken to, and it's basically a use that's allowed by right in your residential, single-family, detached dwelling zoning areas, R1, R2, and R3. So R2 says that under institutional living, you have nursing homes, which are delineated. Then you have group homes, which is an S, and then you have foster care, and then you have a separate proviso, which says homes providing special services for handicapped or infirm, nursing care, child care, halfway houses, congregate living facilities, and group homes. And under that category, under R2, it's blank. Doesn't have it as a permitted use. It doesn't have it as a provisional or special use. It doesn't have it designated as a special exception, and it doesn't have it designated as C, conditional use. Now, just as an aside, my interpretation of zoning law is that provisional or special use stands alone as something on its own. Provisional use and special use is conflating terms that don't really go together. Provisional use is something that's on a temporary basis. A special use is something that has a criteria for the special permit to be issued, and usually there's a section in the code, which we have, that talks about special uses. And if you look at that section of our land development regulations, I believe it's under table 7 or section 7, and it speaks to provisional uses, i.e. in this instance, they're also calling it special uses. And this is part 7.0901, and it really speaks to accessory uses. And the definition of provisional use is also provided in section 2.02.02, provisional uses. Provisional uses are allowed as a matter of right in each district as prescribed in table 2.02.01. provided that the use adheres to the standards prescribed in the zoning district and is in accordance with the supplemental standards and regulations as prescribed by Part 7.0900. The provisions are designated by the letter S in Table 2.02.01. And again, I think that's conflating a lot of those terms that are used to be that we're used to hearing and jumbling them up and creating some ambiguity here. But my job, and I think your administrator's job, is to try to take what we have right now and understand what it says until we have a new zoning code and apply it the best we can. And so stating that a special use is a matter of use by right, again, that's a little bit different. That's typically a permitted use, but that's what it says in our existing zoning code. So, and again, when you look at your special, your provisional use provisions, it really doesn't give you much other than the standards of accessory uses. So there is a bit of confusion as to what is a group home, what is a group home as delineated under your section 1.12, and how is that applied. Your zoning administrator, your city manager in this instance, we don't have a planner, we have Scott Coons, and we will continue to talk to Mr. Coons, and I think at your appellate hearing, you will probably hear from Mr. Coons or somebody from his staff from the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council. And but they're the interpreter of the code. That's what we're supposed to do in applying these provisions. So your city manager has explained to you the process, and I've tried to delineate where we're at, which is factually giving you the timeline of an application came to the city. And actually, I didn't mention the date and time of that application. It was by Ms. Bacon. It's dated February 27th, 2014. Action was taken based upon that provision under Chapter 419. Mr. Grunder, in my opinion, has timely filed for an appeal because procedurally he did not receive notice until just very recently of the fact that a group home or a facility, as stated under 419, is operating, in my understanding, adjacent to his property. I think he has the right to file for an appeal. That will come before you as a quasi-judicial hearing, and then you have the ability to make your determination at that point. So that's my step-by-step analysis of where we're at right now and where we're headed. I don't think it's appropriate to argue the case, take testimony. If folks are going to give testimony, they need to be sworn in, and this isn't the time and is not the place to do that. That's going to be at some point down the road. Right now, city staff should investigate the facts, give you our analysis. Mr. Coons or his staff needs to give you his analysis. Your city manager needs to give his analysis, and then at that stage, we need to have a hearing on this and hopefully put it to rest. So that's where we're at, Mr. Mayor, and that's my statement of the procedural process of exactly where we're at this juncture.
Any question for the attorney? Commissioner Barnes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll direct this to Scott. Thank you for the lengthy explanation, but it's a good explanation. I'm reading, this is the first time I've seen 419. I'm looking at 3A where it talks, 3B where it talks about provisions of the local government may, and so it appears that the local government has some say in that. I just want to give you the facts as I know them. I received an email, I think all the commissioners received an email from Gary Grunder with some concerns about it at some point a couple weeks ago. When I heard it was a provisional special use permit that was issued, I made some inquiries at City Hall, One, I was told at that point it was 8 people, that the application was for 8 people. I was told it was a provisional and special use permit, and then in looking at our land development codes, seen that notices should be sent out for a provisional use permit. So I wondered how that happened without ever getting done, and this never coming to the commission. And my final question was, Mr. Grunder then has the right to appeal, I believe, doesn't he? And I think that was addressed to Jenny. And Jenny spoke to Ginger, I believe, and Ginger came back to Jenny, who told me his 30 days expired, he can't appeal. So I like what you've said. I think it clarifies some things. But this just goes back to the problems we have with our land development code and how, as Mr. Walker has said, have been interpreted by our city manager. Not by the commission, by the city manager. So at that, I will not make this the big argument that it might be on my part until all the facts are looked at. But I think I've given you what I know as facts, and they've changed. They've changed from 8 people to 6, which wasn't the original application. An appeal is now available. That wasn't, so that's a good thing. I have not been fully informed on many things in the city, and this is just another one of them. So, thank you, Scott, for the explanation.
Mr. James, you raise your hand up.
And I don't mean to be cute on this or whatever, but can you just say it in a very short words here? Give me the Reader's Digest version of what you said, because, I mean, I see we're in the appeal. So if we don't do anything now, if we're waiting, I'm assuming the house is occupied. Where are we then as we wait? Just, I apologize, I know I'm not saying it correctly, but it just seems like we've got this, but what do we do now? What does Mr. Grunder do? What do the people who have the house do? Is everything just stay status quo until we have the official appeal hearing? Is in layman's terms,
Yes.
is that where we're at?
Yes.
I mean,
We need to schedule the hearing,
Okay.
and what I intend to do is have the all of the things that I'm developing in the both the law and the code provisions, the pertinent code provisions, the land development regulations. I'll highlight all of that for you so that you can follow all of these provisions and then look at how we get from point A to point Z and have all that laid out for you. So that's my intent.
we're within a time frame is all and I'm just asking, is there a time frame? Are we susceptible to any other type of recourse from anyone while we're waiting for this appeal to be done? I mean, I'm just wondering if you sit out there and we're going to do the appeal, I mean, where are we? I mean,
well, there's a principle in the law that no matter which side you sit on in a case, you have to finish out what you have to get done in an administrative proceeding. It's called exhausting your administrative remedies. And so really, in my view, and again, attorneys can disagree with me all day long, and they do. But in my view, nothing can happen until you finish out this process. And it's a very important step along the way because the type of proceeding that happens next is typically called a writ of certiorari, which means that the testimony that's provided at the appellate proceeding is transcribed and then used by the court to make a determination of whether or not the city was in the right or whether the city was in the wrong. And so that's a very important step along the way. And that's the step that has not happened yet that needs to happen. So we will do this in an expedition. Both sides need final resolution on this. The Bacons need it, Mr. Grunder needs it, and we need to get done with that. So we'll do this in a post-haste fashion.
Okay.
It's not going to sit, in other
Okay.
words. Within the next 30 days, we'll schedule
Okay.
a hearing and get it knocked out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions from the dais? Anyone from the audience want to speak on this matter? Mr. Grunder?
I'm Gary Grunder. My wife and I are the appellees here. First of all, this permit was not issued under Chapter 419. The city manager never discovered Chapter 419 until we filed an appeal. This permit was issued under your zoning code. Okay, that's the first problem you have here. What I'm dealing with is shape shifting in the sense that, well, if it's not legal under the code, then we'll find another way to make it legal. But what should happen here is you should hear the appeal. And if you find that the Bacons were not correctly granted the permit under your zoning code, then they need to come back under 419 or whatever they want to come back on and reapply. Because we were never granted the opportunity of a hearing, and this should be heard. So I completely disagree that we can make an appeal and suddenly we're going to now look around for a law which supersedes our law, and that's okay. It's not okay. And what should happen here is there should be an appeal. And then, if the appeal overturns the decision, the Bacons can come back and they can reapply. Now, another problem is Section 120401(3) says, an appeal stays all proceedings in furtherance of the action appealed. So, if we're following the code, then the appeal should stay the operation of the group home. I would also, while we're all getting red definitions under 419, does 419 include homes for persons adjudged delinquent or criminal? Our zoning code does. So what are we going to do here? Are we going to pull what? Time's up. Are we going to pull what we find attractive in one code out? And do we have loose leaf codes now? That's the question. So we have a lot of issues here, and we haven't been following the code. We're not currently following the code. And this matter really needs to come up on a hearing. But it shouldn't come up on some omnibus, well, if anything holds, we just disregard city ordinance.
All right, Mr. Grunder, your time is up. I won't be accused of
I'm sorry.
allowing you to.
I don't think you can or should restrict me from speaking under this circumstance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd give him some extra time just to finish it out.
I think if you're going to put the buzzer on, you need to put it on the attorney, the manager, and the other parties here, because I'm a party and I need to have a fair hearing. And 4 minutes or 5 minutes is not going to cut it. But at any rate, I think you're going to find when you listen to this thing on appeal that what you've heard in terms of the statute tonight is going to be quite different than what you have in your ordinance. And I think you're going to find that what you have in your ordinance is extremely disturbing if this decision is made by the city manager. And my argument to you on appeal is going to be that we're appealing a decision under the High Springs zoning code to allow a group home. Now, if that decision doesn't hold muster under the High Springs zoning code, then I'm going to ask you to do what you should do, which is to overturn the permit. The Bacons can then come back. They can reapply under whatever they're going to reapply under, hold the public hearing, and we can all be heard and have an opportunity to decide this where it needs to be done. So, having said that, I would respectfully ask that you set a hearing date on the appeal and that hearing date be as soon as reasonably possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I think you was telling us you're going to set the process, set up an appeal date, and we'll handle that situation at that time.
We'll get that done.
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
My name is Michelle Daniels. I'm a MedWaiver support coordinator, and I work for three of the four individuals that currently live in the group home. And with everything that's been said, I haven't really heard a reason for the neighbor not wanting the group home there. I'm sure he has his own reasons, but I just wanted to bring that to light, that there really hasn't been an explanation of why he's not wanting the group home there, which I would be interested in hearing directly from him. But I just wanted to mention also, he said a stay of the group home operation, which would involve the people having to move and uprooting them, and that's very difficult for my clients. They've been with this provider for a long time. They're just getting used to the new home. So the idea of having to uproot them and move them, they would probably not all be in the same group home. They would be spread in different group homes. It would be very disruptive for these three individuals, for the four individuals. So I know you didn't mention, the discussion between you two was to keep everything as it is, but the last speaker did mention that he feels there should be a different decision. So I just want to point that out. And also, I believe that, I don't want to speak for Ms. Bacon, but I believe she would be willing to change it to 6. I think Mr. Walker kind of explained that APD even explained it was really a matter of the square footage of the home that was that decision. There are currently only 4 individuals in the home.
Mr. Mayor, just from a procedural standpoint for everybody that's here, everyone that comes up and speaks is going to be passionate about the situation and is going to be concerned about it and is probably an interested party. And what I would suggest is keep your comments to the chair. The whole process works a lot better. Don't speak to the public. Don't speak to either side, that sort of thing. It just makes the whole process work so much better, and we keep civility and we stay centered on what the issues are. And again, this isn't the time to fight the issue or sway us one way or another. There's going to be an entire proceeding on this. Everyone will get a right to be heard. They'll be able to say exactly what their position is, and we'll have that opportunity coming up, Mr. Mayor. But that just for folks that are here and are not used to public speaking or not used to presenting, this is the procedure this evening, and that's exactly the procedure that we'll keep when we get ready to have the appellate procedure as well.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, my name is Derek Bacon. I'm Sheila Bacon's husband. I prepared a long statement, but I think I'll hold off on that for just a moment. But I just want to touch on a couple key points that the commissioners may not be aware of. Number one is that My wife has operated a group home within the city limits of Hot Springs for 5 years. All we did was move the clients. Those clients have been living in Hot Springs for up to 5 years. We just changed locations. So I don't want the commission to think that these are people from outside the community who are coming and, bombing the neighborhoods with people who haven't lived here. They've been here. They've been to, what's the festival they have? They come to your festivals. They shop in your stores. They're great people. They just need a little more help with their daily living skills. And that's what my wife provides for them. She's been doing this with people with special needs for over 20 years. And it means a lot to us and a lot to our family. These special needs people, they're just people, They don't mean any harm. They won't harm anybody. They might talk your ear off, but, they're not causing any harm. And we've been in the community for 10 years. We've been the Grunders neighbors for 10 years. I think we've been good stewards of the community, and we just ask that the appeal be denied. My wife followed every rule that the city put out before her. She's licensed by the state. The state has approved the group home. So that's all. Thank you.
I stated before, my name's Vernon Shear. I've been a longtime resident of High Springs. I don't doubt these people's integrity or anything that they said. That's not my gripe. My property joins said property. My gripe is I don't believe the city commissioner had authority to grant this permit. After studying the rules and regulations, I'm not a lawyer, but if we're going to have a special hearing where everybody gets a chance to state their reasons, I'll hold my thoughts until then. But I'll just ask that you do. Nobody on this commission would want a group home next to their property if they own it. It's going to decrease the value of your property. Period.
I thank you. As the city attorney said, this is not the time to. What's your opinion at the hearing? Then I get opportunity to speak to them.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So no decision being made on tonight.
My name is Gene Pettyway. I've studied High Springs government for more than 40 years. I came here in 1970, became a property owner, became a city commissioner, became a mayor of the city. But I have never had anything that bothered me as badly as finding out a city manager could make a decision on a change in the zoning. Now, I know that he should be able to make a recommendation to the commission to make a change, and don't say it's not a change, because an exception to a zoning permit is a change for that piece of property. And there is no group home allowed in the residential category that this group home is in. And I too would not worry about the integrity of those people, but it's where it is placed. And in my opinion, the commission could make that and could agree to this city commissioner's recommendation. But I've never heard of a city commission allowing a city manager to grant an exception to a zoning law. It's my opinion that the city commission needs to do something about that happening. I have nothing against Mr. Booth at all. I just don't think it's within his realm to be allowed to do that. And I have studied the law. I have studied the ordinances that have affected it, and there's definitely a conflict there. And it's up to you guys and ladies to straighten that out. It's not up to your attorney to take care of that. You have to do it yourself. You're the governing body of the city. And I would charge you to make sure that this is taken care of and taken care of quickly, because it's already gone further than it should. There are already exceptions to the zoning ordinance in High Springs already that shouldn't be there. But I would urge you as a commission to take care of it.
Thomas DePeter. A couple of quick points. One, I think was raised in the appeal but hasn't been brought forward, whether or not the section in your code that refers to whether or not the owner has to be occupying the premises while the group home exists, and I don't know if that's been explained or something you might want to consider when you're evaluating the appeal. I also believe the city would be well served if you focus your appeal on the technical question as to whether or not your zoning administrator had the authority to grant the use, as opposed to whether or not somebody wants a group home next to their home. If you allow it to go that way, you're going to find out why the legislature passed a law that said you can't have public hearings on this issue because nobody's going to say they want it next to them. So your issue should be whether or not he properly passed or granted permission for the use, not whether or not you should allow group homes without public hearings. It seems like the legislature has ruled on that one. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any more commissioners? Okay. That being said, we'll move on to discuss the number 2, Florida League of Cities Annual Conference.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I might just ask one question. Are you going to set a hearing date on an appeal?
Yes.
Are you going to do that tonight?
Well, we will check with Jenny as to a date and a time and then publish the notice of the time. Gary, that's my plan.
So the city commission is agreeing to hear the appeal?
Correct. That's my advice, and that is what we will do. And I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we hear this alone. It's probably going to be a lengthy proceeding for the evening. So I would suggest this be a special meeting on its own.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion just for the record that we hold an appeal or hearing on this issue within the next 30 days.
I'll second.
Yeah, motion and a second. Any other discussion? They have them. Yeah, here. Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
before you move on. I'd like clarification from our city attorney. Were you prepared or not prepared to speak to, you said at the very beginning of when you were talking, you weren't prepared yet, or I'd like to know if I heard you correctly, and why weren't you prepared?
No, we're still working on the issues of the factual matters, and we will develop that a little bit further, is my anticipation. But I think we're probably pretty well there. We've got the application from the state. We've got the application that was made to the local government. We've talked to Mr. Booth. We've talked to Scott Coons at the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council, Ms. Mayfield from the Aging Department agency with persons with developmental disabilities. So I think we have spoken to a number of people and developed our factual background pretty significantly up to this point. But the second part of it is, other than the factual matters that we've developed up to this stage, this really needs to go, it needs to be scheduled. Everybody needs to have the due process. There needs to be a hearing set so that Mr. Grunder can come in with whatever evidence and witnesses he wants to offer, his interpretation of the law. The Bacons can do the same thing and have a formal hearing on that. My view of this is it's going to be a quasi-judicial proceeding, and we'll swear in the witnesses and proceed in that manner. None of that is ready for tonight. That was my commentary on that, Commissioner Gester.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would you provide us copies of the
Absolutely.
materials you have?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. And anybody that wants that, I'm free to do that, glad to do that.
Thank you. Anything else on this matter? Okay, so we move on to number 2. The Florida League of City Annual Conference. Appointing a delegate, discuss attendance And consider alternate meeting dates for August. Mr. City Manager, City Clerk. Who's gonna handle that one? Clerk or the City Manager?
You bet. That's all right. Yeah, we've sent out a request to find out who's going to the League of Cities meeting, which is going to be held in Hollywood. I think we've heard from Mr. Barnes, Sue Weller, myself, and we'd like to know if there's anybody else on the council that's going to go.
Yes, sir. I'll be going.
Okay, we'll put that down. We haven't yet gotten any word about housing or anything else. We don't get that till probably the end of July.
It appears that evidently they're looking for a voting delegate.
They're right. In the packet, they're requesting a voting delegate. Usually goes to the meetings and votes for High Springs.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that the mayor be the delegate since he's planning to go. Do you need to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the mayor be the voting delegate with Sue Weller as alternate delegate, should the mayor not be able to make it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, come by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, in light of the fact that we have a commissioner-elect that evidently is not going to have to go through the election process, I would like to suggest that we offer to pay for that individual, if that person would like to attend, to go to that conference. There's a lot of information there that person can learn from and hopefully be better prepared coming on to the commission in November rather than having, I mean, he would still have to wait, he would still have to attend the April Florida League of Cities training, but they do have sessions on ethics, they have sessions on 101 basics that I think would be beneficial to the commissioner-elect, Mr. Evans, to attend. So I guess I'll make a motion to that effect, that the city offer to pay for his attendance at that meeting.
I'll second for discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I don't have a problem with that. I think it's probably a good idea. The question being, can Mr. Evans attend?
Sure.
Can he find a time? If he can attend,
right, then
I think we certainly offer that to him.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah,
it would have depended upon his ability to attend. I think this is
Just give your name for the record.
Jason Evans. I'll have to check my calendar and make sure, but I'm normally pretty flexible. I should be able to attend, and if Vice Mayor believes it'd be beneficial, I'd be more willing to attend and hopefully get some good out of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be very good for him also. That's very good training. Just, I guess, from a legal standpoint, can we, as Commissioner Gill,
No, I think that's entirely appropriate. There's a number of things that he will need to be up to speed on, public records laws and sunshine law, all that sort of thing, and this is the start of that process, so, and that's very typical.
Okay. Any other discussion?
There is money enough in the budget to cover that.
Okay. Okay. Another discussion? All in favor, come by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Alternate dates for August. Clerk, do you have any suggestions? Excuse me?
7th and 28th.
What would it normally have been, Jenny?
14.
I'm fine with both, any one of those dates.
I'm fine with them too. If we want to do both, that's fine with that also. 7th and the 28th.
I'm okay with 7th and 28th.
You're just switching the 14th to the 7th, right?
Yeah, because the 28th would be a normal commission
Right.
date anyway, so it's just really we're changing it to the 7th.
Right.
Okay.
Good, Mr. Cashman, you have?
Fine.
City Attorney, is that fine with you and Courtney?
Yes, sir.
All right, do we need a motion or we just need to?
Yes, sir. Motion would be good. To move formally move the meeting of the 14th to the 7th.
I'll make a motion to move the normal commission meeting of August, that would normally be the commission meeting of August 14th to August 7th.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Being none, all in favor, come by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, at this time, we have the city attorney's update and reports.
We had our, sorry.
Oh, you okay? Okay.
We had our first PBA negotiations last week and had some good discussions. And in light of that, we'll have a shade meeting to discuss those negotiations and some proposals for you all on July 10th prior to your CRA meeting and the regular commission meeting to begin at 5:30.
Okay. That's it? Oh, my goodness, okay. Any questions for the city attorney? Okay. Mr. City Manager?
Sure. The commission has the financial reports through the 19th of June. They look pretty good. We actually have a increase in revenues that we didn't, it's not much, but there's a small increase in revenues that wasn't anticipated. In August, be the August the 7th, Finance Department will present an amended budget. In that amended budget, you'll find we're going to ask for a police car because there is a reduction in personnel costs. That we can put another police car in this year. And that's about the only thing we'll ask for. The 2015 budget was sent out to the commission. We have a meeting to present the entire budget to the council, to commission on the 10th of July. On the 1st of July, we'll have a workshop, and I'll present those police, fire, public works budgets. But as you look over the entire budget, which is balanced, please bring up comments on the 10th. So I'm sorry, on the 1st, so that we can make preparations for presenting it to you on the 10th.
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor Will.
The meeting that's on the 10th, that's a regular commission meeting, that's when you're going to present the budget.
I am.
Officially.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Jennifer has done a lot of work on it, found a few ambiguities and a few mistakes. She's going to be a good asset. There's a few mistakes even Huey made, so with her help and the two of us, we put together, I think, a pretty good balanced budget. It contains just about everything everybody wants. I should note that we have 6 months worth of reserve now, not 3, and so although this is an austere year, I think the follow-on years are going to be a lot better. The county is going to start the road over Tillman Estates in about 3 weeks. There, in the next 2 weeks, they're going to start moving rock and their equipment over there on the Tillman property that we've gotten permission to use. And so I've gotten, and I think I presented you an email, but I've gotten a couple emails from the residents over there by the sewer plant, and they love the road. And that's it.
Okay, any question for the city manager? Okay, Commissioner Jameson?
No, sir, I'm fine.
Commissioner Gasher?
If I could, for Jenny to email us the changes of the dates of the meetings so that we, okay, that would be helpful. Also, I'd like to know what communication has been established in communicating to the public about the WAC, which we've talked about. We're going to take steps. I'd like to know what's been done since we signed the contract. And if we haven't taken action, we need to.
WCA?
With the garbage.
You said WAC.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But with the garbage service.
We're going to meet, and they're going to put out a pamphlet, and we're going to cover everything in that pamphlet they put out.
And you'll put it on the website?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes?
Question about the budget before we get to it on the first. Are we allowing police cars to go home, I think, again?
No, not till...
Because the gas looks like it's going up, and I'm just...
Okay, not unless the commission approves that.
So we're still under that program that's not allowed?
That's right.
Okay.
Until we get a few more cars, it's not even feasible because the cars need to stay close because of maintenance.
I see you're going out of town.
This Friday, but I'll be back Tuesday.
And Anton will be the acting city manager.
He will.
We've got his numbers, I saw somewhere. Phone numbers. I did see them somewhere. Okay. I'm going to once again comment that I have not been kept fully informed. Way too many things happen that I don't get informed on. I think it's not my job to come to City Hall and ask to sit in a meeting. The charter doesn't say that. The charter says that Bob Barnes, the commissioner, should be fully informed about the budget, about the city operations and things going on. I want to again say that at a public meeting. I don't believe that's being done, at least with me. I'm going to make a comment about the flyer that I put out. I put out a flyer to my neighborhood. I put it out before I filed any election papers. And I think whether it was after I filed election papers or before I filed election papers, I still have the right to say whatever I want to as a city commissioner, my constituents. And had nothing to do with the election or the campaign. I think we've gone through that once before, a couple years ago, before Mr. Booth was here and we talked about it. I think if the attorneys feel that I've overstepped my bounds, I look forward to a letter from you. And if I've not overstepped my bounds, then it's okay for me to put out a letter as a commissioner to my constituents. I think I also should have a letter that states that. I have nothing else.
Vice Mayor Willis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have one thing, and I noticed we've received a letter from the Florida Public Safety Institute to our police chief about, I guess, their results in developing a comprehensive traffic safety program, and they've been awarded 12,000 points to buy something online. I was just curious, what does that 12,000 points get you?
Well, they have a catalog, and I'm sure the chief will tell you what 12,000 points.
We're excited about that accomplishment, and those 12,000 points would give us a lot of toys. It includes radar, it includes lights, anything that law enforcement use, PBT, which is a portable breath test instrument, those type things that the taxpayers won't have to pay, but it be utilized mostly things that are traffic related. And so we're excited about that, and excited about the opportunity to win a brand new vehicle as well, since we place one, either first, second, or third place in agencies our size. We don't know our place yet until we go down there tomorrow. So if we place first, and we'll have the opportunity to take the key to a brand new F-150, and if it works, we'll have a nice new car that's decked out with lights.
What are the odds on that?
From what I've been told, that if you place first, you have to be first, and there'll be about 12 other agencies that also place first in their category.
I see.
So you have 1 in 12 chances.
Oh, okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, it would be something. Madam Clerk, make sure you give Mr. Evans a copy of the flyer for the conference. Kind of give him information what's going on. Also, I have several people complaining about the railroad again, all the grass growing up on the railroad.
We'll call them again and see if they'll, they did a half-hearted effort last time, but
Yes.
at least there was some cutting of it. We'll get a hold of CSX.
I think if they keep it maintained, it won't be so bad. And also, I guess just with the potholes, I know that's probably dealing with us. Some of the potholes at the railroad crossings.
Yes, that is ours.
Okay.
We'll take a look at it. We have in the budget, and we'll present it, but we have a better solution to what we're doing in filling up potholes.
Okay. And also the city right away, the mowing. I know it's raining, but it's been a while.
Okay.
I feel sorry for my neighbor. He go on the other side of the road and try to cut all that grass, which he cannot do it on that little track. So please look into that. Getting the grass cut. I mean, that's throughout the whole community.
Right.
See where the grass is growing up. Also, I did travel the new, I want to say paved road, chip seal road. It looked very nice. I traveled the whole 1.4, and it looks really nice.
It does.
Really nice. I think most of the people I spoke with said they're pretty much happy with it. Also, the city manager and I, we had a very good conversation with Senator Ted Yoho. Very positive meeting. He called me for the meeting, so nobody say he didn't invite no one else, but he called me, I didn't call him. Very positive meeting, very, very, very positive meeting. And he wanted actually one of the issues that we wanted to pursue, and we pretty much told him economic development and job creation. And he said he wanted to try to help us as much as possible to do so, and he threw out some ideas to us and told us some upcoming economic development coming into the area, not High Springs per se, but around the area that we might be able to piggyback off of. And he said if anything that we need from him, he'd be more than happy to help us. So I think that was a very, very, very positive meeting to meet with him. And if possible, if it's all right with the commissioners, Jen, we can send him a letter telling him thank you for coming to High Springs and meeting with us. Had a very good lunch at Bell's Burger. Everything else closed on Monday, so we had to go to Bell's Burgers. That's all I have. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. I just really wanted to say that the parking on the First Street there looks great, and a lot of people were using it today that I saw for the farmer's market. So that's added a good amount of parking there, which was paid for by CRA dollars,
That's right. It was.
That's it.
Oh, and one more thing. Some of mine. On this past weekend, we had Douglas annual, our reunion weekend, and all the people are so proud. The people that used to live in High Springs that moved away, but they came back home. They were so proud to see where High Springs is going, and it was very delighted about the museum over there. We got an opportunity to walk over there and look at the museum. They was very, very pleased with that. And they was pleased with the city, so I pumped it up to how great our city is and told them to come on back to the gateway of the Springs. So we want to thank them for coming to the city this weekend. And wasn't much money brought to the city, but a little money was brought to the city. So again, we want to thank them for that. And that's all I have. Nothing else? I understand a motion to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn.
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
Out of their home now? No, I'm having a problem about having